Michael Salvatore, Lorraine McLeese, and Michael Sechrist. These are three names that you very well may be familiar with if you've been following the history of Bungie's published titles, starting from the very first Halo all the way through Destiny 1 and now Destiny 2. Why is that? Well, the two Michaels are some of the head OST composers of Bungie. Michael Sechrist having worked on a fair bit of D2 music and potentially some Halo music as well, and Michael Salvatore having been one of the OG composers alongside Marty O'Donnell himself throughout the entirety of Bungie's time on Halo, as well as one of the primary and then the primary composer for all of the major tracks and soundtracks in D1 and D2. Lorraine McLeese is one of the principal artists at Bungie and has been with the company for the last 22 years and has done such notable things as, designing the Halo logo. These three people have all been laid off from Bungie as of October 30th, 2023, and are only three of approximately 100 people who have been laid off from the company in what has been no short of an absolute bloodbath. This is the downfall of Destiny, but more importantly, I think it's the downfall of Bungie in a lot of ways. It started as a very slow decline, but we've fallen off the cliff, and we're going to talk about that today. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and no normal self-advertisement on this one. It just doesn't quite feel appropriate. But if you know me, you know that Destiny is something that has been very important to me for a very long time. My profile picture on YouTube is my Guardian from Destiny. It's a series that has been very near and dear to my heart for a very long time, riding off of my love of Halo from my childhood. And it's just a shame to see what's happening with Bungie and with Destiny in the last year especially, but I mean as of yesterday. Man. So if you didn't know, like I said at the start, there was a series of layoffs that occurred and we're still learning about as of 4:24 p.m. on the 31st of who exactly was let go and who and why and where and what's happening to them and everything. That seems to be part of a major restructuring effort at Sony writ large. Sony recently bought Bungie for $3.7 billion. But in part, this seems to be due to the fact that Bungie has been massively underperforming when it comes to the development of Destiny. Jason Schreier of Bloomberg, a very notable figure in the overall gaming space, especially when it comes to reporting on things like layoffs, delays, kind of drama that goes on behind the scenes until he exposes it in the overall gaming sphere. He first broke a lot of this story yesterday when he announced that it had been revealed to some employees that the Final Shape, the last major expansion in the current saga of Destiny 2, which was scheduled to come out in February, had been pushed back to June due to issues that have now been revealed. We'll talk about that in a second. That was also going to be pushing back all of Destiny's other planned content, as well as pushing Marathon, Bungie's newest game that they're bringing back an old IP for that was apparently supposed to be out in late 2024, pushing that back into 2025. This came alongside the breaking news on social media as a variety of different people who worked at Bungie, worked being the operative word, revealing that they had in fact been laid off, that they had had no prior warning about this, and that they had no idea who else was being laid off. We just kind of had to find out as the news broke on Twitter and in various other social media platforms because Bungie hadn't said anything about it. In total, as of this moment, and remember this is news that is still breaking, we know of people who have been let go from Bungie's communications teams, their social media teams, including their two head community managers, as well as their head of social media, the publishing team, their legal team, literally lawyers, are gone, their art dev teams, their player support teams, their recruitment teams, their QA teams, and of course, their music and sound design teams, as you can kind of figure with people like the Michaels being gone. And it just seems to keep getting worse. As news continued to come out, Bungie CEO Pete Parsons took to Twitter to state how bad he felt and how it's such a sad day for Bungie and how it's so terrible that this had to happen. And his heart goes out to all of these talented folk who were let go from the company, fired, but we don't use that term anymore, apparently. And fortunately, everyone in the comments immediately took to dragging the man, as he so rightfully deserves. Because again, he's the CEO, and even if he didn't directly call for these layoffs to happen, even if that is a decision that was made by Sony, he still is the one who had to write off on who would be getting the axe and why, and presumably he had a big role to play in Bungie being sold to Sony, thus leading directly to this series of events. So not exactly a blameless individual here. As more and more information has come out, as more people have come forward to state that they had been let go or that they knew people who had been let go, even if they themselves were not, it's really just painted a grimmer and grimmer picture. I mean, again, talk about Michael Salvatore. He's probably, in the general consciousness, the most notable figure to be released here, as, again, Destiny and Halo wouldn't be what they are without his work. If you think of Halo and you think of Destiny, even if you don't like the games or you take issue with where Bungie took them in time and all that type of stuff, the music is still universally acclaimed. And that man is just gone. So many incredibly talented people who aren't as forward-facing, but who have had their hands involved in so much of the good that Bungie has done with these titles are gone. Seemingly almost randomly. And it just blows my mind. Like, we've gone from the game's declining stability and arguably the declining quality of what's been on offer in terms of new gear and new locations, the disastrous launch of Lightfall and how poorly received that was, the player base falling off, then Bungie announcing that they're raising prices across the board, the past couple of years having seen a massive increase in monetization across the board, something which I've critiqued in the past, and yet which Bungie meat riders proceeded to make fun of me and to try to say, oh, well, if you can't afford a $2 increase in seasons, you probably shouldn't be playing video games, when clearly that is not the issue at hand here. And now here we are. The game was falling apart, and now the company is falling apart. The latest news that came out literally just prior to me starting to record this video was a new report, again, from Jason Schreier, who had the following to say. Note as well that I'll have a link to these articles in the description of the video if you want to read it for yourself and see what there is to see. Bungie's decision to cut an estimated 100 jobs from its staff of about 1,200 followed dire management warnings earlier this month of a sharp drop in the popularity of its flagship video game, Destiny 2. Just 2 weeks ago, executives at the Sony-owned game developer told employees that revenue was running 45% below projections for the year, according to people who attended the meeting. So, of course, this follows directly off of the poor overall reception of D2 Lightfall, what many consider to be the worst expansion that Bungie has ever made for Destiny, and certainly is the worst reviewed of all time. It's something that has caused many people to stop playing the game, myself included, and actively discouraging others from continuing to play the game as well. And it's clear that this is reflected in Bungie's bottom line. There was also rumblings that the final shape was getting good but not great feedback, which is what prompted Bungie to push the release back 4 months to June of 2024. And now we can start to see where maybe the fat cats up top were starting to get scared, right? Got to secure those golden parachutes. Got to make sure that Papa Sony doesn't think that their big, shiny $3.7 billion acquisition was actually, a polished turd, shall we say. And so then now here come the layoffs. You've got so many people who are the people who are boots on the ground, actually trying to make the best content that they can, who have made some of the best content that we've had in Destiny, and I would say some of the best content that we've seen out of AAA gaming in the last 5 to 10 years since the inception of Destiny, despite its issues. There's a reason that I stuck with the game for as long as I did. I think there's a lot of good there. And a lot of the issues that we've had were probably, again, due to that C-suite level executive meddling that has now led directly to where we are today. And yet those are the people who have been with Bungie longer than some of you listening to this have probably been alive. They're the ones who get the axe. Just like we're seeing it happen everywhere else through gaming and through tech and just through business in general, It's not the people who make the poor decisions that lead to the poor financials who get in trouble. No. No. It's the relatively innocent people who are just trying to do their jobs and put passion into something that they care so much about who wind up being punished when things don't go exactly as planned. And it's just a shame. I can't say I'm too surprised, though. Again, you look at my previous coverage of what's been happening with Destiny, you look at the discussions that have been happening online, you look at overall player sentiment and how poorly it's trending. It stands to reason that there's some really bad stuff brewing behind the scenes, and that something like this was going to happen. It's really not too surprising. This is clearly still a developing story. I wasn't expecting Jason Schreier to have another article with more specific details out quite so quickly, so you can probably expect to see some updates from me as we learn more about what's happening here. I would not be surprised at all if we saw disgruntled employees coming forward, anonymously or not, to talk about things going on behind the scenes at Bungie, what led up to these layoffs, how it all went down. I mean, like, again, you're talking about people who went into work, found out that there was an all-company meeting, and 30 minutes later, 100 people don't have jobs, and they're being told to leave. Managers of teams weren't even told what members of their teams they were going to be losing until it happened. People were showing up for work still, getting their updates, getting new badges, and seeing their friends leave the building with their belongings in boxes. This is not something that was planned for, and it's sure as hell not something that was executed well. And it just goes to show the fact that people to these major companies are just another expendable asset. You know, we see a lot of talk, and probably won't now, seeing as how their social teams and their community managers have all been laid off. But we see a lot of talk from Bungie, or saw it in the past, about how forward-thinking they were, about how they care so much about their employees, about how they have all these initiatives that they've set up for underprivileged groups, how they care so much about accessibility, and how they want the communities that have grown around Destiny and around Bungie's products and overall sense of culture, that they want those things to continue. They want to protect it. Then suddenly the bottom line gets affected, and all that goes right out the window. So if you're a gaming fan, if you're a fan of Destiny, Halo, anything that Bungie's done, try to remember, these corporations don't give a shit about you or their employees. When it comes down to brass tacks, they're going to do what every other corporation has always done. They're going to protect the people at the top by punishing the people at the bottom. So try not to go around singing the praises of your new favorite corporate overlord because they happen to say things that you agree with or that you think are morally correct. Because it's all just set dressing. They don't actually care. Maybe the people on the ground do, but again, a lot of those people just got kicked out of the building, so it doesn't really matter in terms of that, does it? My heart goes out to all those people who have been working so hard on Destiny and Bungie's various other projects, putting their all into it, and for the people that it was a dream to work at this company, who now have had all of that thrown back in their faces. I hope they're able to find new work. I hope maybe there's other game dev teams out there who are in less dire straits than Bungie who can scoop those people up, give them positions that they deserve, and let them keep creating in a space that desperately needs those talented creators, not to be throwing them out onto the street. Hell, maybe we'll see some of those old heads from the old Halo days of Bungie wind up being scooped back up by 343 and start working on making Halo what it should be again, right? Wouldn't that be a sort of poetic full circle turn, huh? Who knows? We'll have to see. For now, that's pretty much everything that there is for me to cover that is either relevant to the topic or that hasn't already been extensively covered by other bigger creators. Keep your eyes on this story. Like I said, it's only going to keep developing from here, I'm sure. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so much for watching. I do very much appreciate it. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, now more than ever, be good to each other. Bye now.